Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for all of our attendees, and we're excited to have you this morning. It's 11 o'clock, and we want to get started. My name is Dan King. I'm the founder of Energy Hub. We work with Amy at Level Up Safety, as well as I'm the founder of Energy Now. So we are excited about this topic, and I see from all the people who signed up, we've got some fantastic people all over the province of Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC. So what I'd like to do is introduce Amy from Level Up Safety, and she's going to be your host this morning for today's webinar.
Great, thanks, Dan. And hi, everyone. And Dan missed the US because we do have some lovely people from Texas. So thank you so much for being here. I am Amy Paulu. I am the founder and CEO of Level Up Safety Technology. I am thrilled to welcome you all to today's discussion and discussing a really important topic around lone worker safety, especially those in oil and gas and the utility sector. It's a critical topic, and I'm grateful you've made time to be a part of this today, so thank you. I'm going to introduce you to our guests, and I'm going to start off with David Hermanson. He is a seasoned project manager who just finished working on the Coastal GasLink project and is now working on another project north of Fort McMurray. He brings over 25 years of field experience in oil and gas, and he will give us the boots on the ground view. Okay, and next we have Joel Lietzo. Joel is the president of Aware 360. He's an expert in real-time safety monitoring and a 30-year veteran in mobile workforce automation. He is also a real-life veteran, so we'll thank him for his service. He is unfortunately having technical difficulties logging in. So we're going to hope that he's able to join us. But if he's not, we're going to have the wonderful Andrew McCauley stepping in for him. Andrew McCauley, an account executive at Aware 360 who works closely with clients to implement and optimize monitoring systems. We have Heather Chapman, head of safety and risk at Soter Analytics and the principal of Paradigm Safety. She brings 25 years experience using tech and data to drive safety culture, performance, and practical solutions. Now let's get started, and we will start with David.
Oh, thanks for having me today. Really appreciate it. I really like this question because most people know that our biggest challenge is related to communication. Because the reality is a lot of these pipeline projects that we're dealing with, they are taking place in incredibly remote and geographically challenging terrains. Which obviously go along with very limited infrastructure. So it does make it very challenging. I can say there's been enormous advances in technology in the past 5 years, which has really improved this. When we started a large LNG project in 2019 to completing it, essentially last year, the technology has advanced so much, it's really helped this problem. So communication is becoming less of a problem as we move forward. When we started the project in 2019, we had repeater towers along our right of way, and then we switched to more messaging devices like Zolios and InReach. And by the time we got to the end of the project, there were Starlinks all over this project. So the real isolation and communication challenges we had all but disappeared. And I have to say, a lot of it was spearheaded by the workers more than even the companies, because the prices of even Starlinks, and now they're available at Costco and whatnot, they've come down in price so much and are so accessible. With a small monthly fee, you can put it on your truck or your camp or whatever, and you can basically be accessible and reach out to your family in addition to the work communication throughout the day. So I would say that challenge, which we've had in the past, is very, very quickly disappearing.
Great. Yeah, thanks, David. What stands out is how your team has built such a strong culture of safety through the structure and leadership. Thank you for that. Andrew, you work with companies facing similar challenges. How does lone worker monitoring technology help fill those gaps, especially when it comes back to check-ins, missed alerts, or sudden incidences?
Thank you, Amy. I think in general, a lot of technology companies, they talk about let's solve big, hard problems, because by doing so, we're really hard to follow. right? That's how we create competitively viable technology, competitive advantage in the marketplace. And I think along the energy production and distribution value chain, the lone worker problem is that tough problem in the lone worker space. And I appreciate David for actually highlighting one of the reasons why it is difficult in that space, right? The geographically diverse environments that we're working in create communication issues. So if we were to take something simple like a check-in procedure, and maybe we'll start step one, the best practice to have when working alone is a periodic and auditable way to check in throughout the day. And really simply, that is, hey, I'm Andrew, I'm alone. I'm going to raise my hand sometimes throughout the day and say, I'm still here and I'm still okay. That simple procedure becomes a lot more complex as soon as communication or the availability of communication methods is limited because of geographic area. So how do we solve that in 2025? David is 100% correct, right? There is Starlink. I can mount that up on my truck. Who knows, in 5 years from now, Mr. Elon Musk, he might launch 1,500 low orbit satellites. And all of a sudden, we've got communication across the globe via cellular network. And he'll even say, hey, you can connect to my Elon network. It's the exact same cost as your Iridium data plan for your old school satellite device, but it's a little bit faster. So easy choice, right? But in the time being, really, when you're outside of cellular connectivity and you don't have something mounted on your truck providing that extended connectivity, you're solving that gap using tools like this one that I held up here. It's almost like a 1994 Game Boy, right? With that interface. Or a little bit newer, this is a satellite device. It connects to my cell phone via Bluetooth and allows for my cell phone to communicate via the Iridium satellite network. So that's one complexity that we solve for, right? We've enhanced communication to the point that I can perform a check-in process regardless of where I am. Say the next tricky bit, and this is often where manual processes fail, this manual check-in process, it's how do I make sure that when someone misses a check-in, there is another person that actually notices and actually responds and works through a process until they figure out, Andrew, he's still there, he's still okay. I think that this is solved really well through, again, technology, right? I work for a technology company. It could be as simple as an app running on the phone. When I sign in to this app, there's a safety timer, my check-in timer, that starts counting down. To check in throughout the day, I click a big green button on my satellite device or I interact with the phone. And if I fail to interact with that phone, then alerts go off through technology that notify the people that are responsible for ensuring that I'm still safe. Whether that is to a group of, Andrew's direct supervisor, for example, or to a third-party monitoring agent whose sole job is to make sure that if Andrew misses a check-in, ultimately, we're going to respond and work through a process until Andrew is checked in upon and we make sure he's still safe. Now, I'm not sure how many safety professionals are in the audience right now, but I'm assuming there's quite a few. And as you know, any single time you implement a new change, a new safety policy, there's bound to be people that raise their hands and say, hey, this is difficult for me. I don't like this. And this would be a great example of one I've heard recently, and I hear all the time too, is, hey, you've just asked me to use an app on my phone while I drive while I work. What do you mean? We have a distracted driving policy, and now you're telling me to check in on my phone. What a silly thing you've just asked of me. Not to worry. In 2025, apps like the one that Level Up Safety offers, they are smart enough to know when your vehicle is in motion. Now that we've been able to collect that data, the vehicle is in motion, we can choose how to act based on that data. So when the vehicle is in motion, for example's sake, Andrew is okay, therefore we should automatically check Andrew in.
Is that because the vehicle's in motion?
Well, precisely.
Yeah.
You can choose to have the information vehicle is in motion, let's do nothing with that information. Or alternatively, you can go and say, now that we know it's in motion, how do we react? Do we check the person in saying, hey, that functioned as I clicked the big green button, I'm checked in for 2 hours? Or maybe we deem driving to be a large risk. Maybe I don't have a telematics system installed within this truck. Well, we could have a short timer set off. If the vehicle stops moving because I hit some black ice and I'm passed out in a ditch somewhere, well, that timer expires, the monitor notices, and we've reduced the time from incident to response. Amy, I'd say I've implemented this type of technology with companies, many different sizes, too many types of industries to count, right? There are lone workers everywhere. And when doing so, there are typically two things that kind of concern the user, the one that's being protected by the system. And the first is people are quick to raise their hands and say this one. It's, is this going to slow me down during the day and waste my time? Right? Is this yet another process that is drawing me away from my actual work? And the other, people aren't as quick to say, but it is a true concern. Is this check-in procedure that we're trying to implement, is it actually going to be used as a tool to micromanage me? And I mean, you need to recognize those things and you need to be able to respond. I'd say for number one, is this going to waste my time? Well, that in motion timer, for example, it's really great. If you're frequently driving throughout the day, well, I'm not even asking you to click a big button. There's no change unless something has gone wrong, and then we know so we can help you. For the micromanage portion, I think that's when maybe third-party monitoring can come in really, really helpful, right? A third-party monitor does not care if you spend an extra 15 minutes at Dunkin' Donuts on the way to site. What they care about is if you need help, we know where you are and we know how to respond. We know which procedures to follow.
Great.
I feel like I was rambling a bit. Should I sum it up and then maybe stop, or?
No, I think we got it. And I think if anyone got lost in there, they're going to ask a question. And I think, is Joel able to speak, or is there still some technical difficulties there? Because I just want to build on this a little bit because we are going somewhere with this, but I'm just not sure if he's able to log on as a speaker. No. Okay,
I think he'd be online if he could get in. So I would just, again, maybe Andrew can step in on his behalf and
yeah, you bet. Yeah.
focus on it. Okay.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for that. So I just want to play on that a little bit more. And I would like you to maybe walk us through how tools like an SOS and a fall detection can help teams get ahead of an emergency before it escalates.
Well, I'll tell you, it's mighty big shoes to fill. Joel Lietzow, my goodness. So Amy, the question was tools like SOS button, fall detection. Yeah, so let's see. Technology, it advances every single day, just like David was saying, right? At the start of that project in 2019, the way they were solving this problem looked a little different than how they're doing it now in 2025. Same goes with things like fall detection, right? One option for fall detection, I've got a lot of props here, you guys. My desk is full of hardware. But one option for fall detection, it's a small wearable tool. When we're talking about fall detection technology, I'd say wearable is one of the most important words. If you're not wearing this thing that's measuring whether you fell, it's not doing you any good. Now, tools like the one I held up, or even this one right here, they're quite simple. Panic button, two-way voice communication through cellular network, that's important to note, with a fall detection algorithm. Now, what happens if I don't have satellite communication or I don't have cellular connectivity in those cases? Well, each one of your smartphones, it has a gyroscope inside of it. It's capable of detecting a fall. The technology is out there. The question is it a good idea to have your phone function as a fall detection device? And I'd say you could argue both ways, right? My phone, for example, it's sitting on my desk right now. If I were to keel over out of this chair, well, thank goodness I'm, speaking on this panel right now because someone would notice. But it's not doing me any good. Unless, of course, my phone turned into part of my uniform, right? I have it strapped to my belt like I would a fall detection device. Further to that, your phone sometimes, when you're implementing a a safety tool. People are looking for reasons to raise their hand and say, hey, this isn't working, therefore I don't like it. My phone, when I get into my truck, I pull it off of my belt if I'm wearing it, or I pull it out of my back pocket and I toss it onto the passenger seat. Well, that toss, it was movement, then lack of movement. That triggers a lot of fall detection algorithms. Now, that being said, if the phone is worn as a part of your uniform, fall detection on a phone is fantastic. It can be enabled through an app like the Level Up Safety offering. And as I said before, that phone can be paired with a satellite device. So now all of a sudden, fall detection can function in areas without cellular connectivity.
Great. Well, thank you for that so much. I would like to say thank you, Joel, but thank you, Andrew, for that. That was a fantastic breakdown. Now, I want to shift things and shift gears a little bit into another layer of safety, and that's injury prevention and compliance. So we often think of safety being preventing major events, but so many of the long-term risks like MSD, injuries and fatigue, can quietly impact workers and lead to serious outcomes. So at Soter, Heather, your AI wearables help companies stay ahead of those risks and also support compliance with evolving safety regulations. Can you share your solutions, how it works, and how it's helping organizations reduce industries and stay ahead of compliance?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And I'll just piggyback on what Andrew said a minute ago. Wearables are incredibly powerful tools and technology, but they only work if they're worn. And so I always find that's a big hurdle that, you know, businesses need to consider how they want to deploy wearables and their strategy for managing success. Like, what does success look like with a wearable? Because you can learn a lot from wearable technology and you can really help protect workers, but it only works if they're actually being worn. So I love wearables, but they present the hurdle in that they do rely on the end user to actually wear them. So at Soter, I'll just break it down into two different segments here. Soter offers wearable technology, so hardware, but also software. And on the hardware side, the device is very much similar in size to what Andrew showed a few minutes ago. It's a small device that is worn on either the arm or the back, and it monitors for movements that would put you at risk of a strain or sprain. And it looks for things like momentum and velocity because it's also checking for kind of the power of a movement. So if I pick up something really heavy and my muscle movement's kind of jerky, it's flagging that. And this technology can be structured such that it provides real-time notifications to employees. So if I'm out in the middle of nowhere working and I'm doing, some sort of movement, maybe I'm hunched over a valve and I'm working a lot of force on it, that device is going to beep and vibrate at me to let me know, hey, I'm putting myself at risk of a potential strain here. It also collects all of this data movement and feeds it to a cloud-based dashboard. So I, as a safety person sitting, 500 miles away, can now see exactly the types of movements this person is making, whether it's bending, twisting, overhead reaching, forceful exertions. I can now start to build basically a physical demand analysis for the work that somebody is doing. So on that side, you now collect a ton of data that helps you either perform ergonomic assessments, create physical demand analyses, and or possibly start to categorize the different tasks that somebody has to do into low, medium, and high risk. Now, on the software side, Soter's solution is much more than just the ergonomic side of things. So all of this IoT, the connected worker, all of that type of data that's collected can get fed into a software solution. So if I stick on the example of creating a physical demand analysis, I can now, in the software side of things, say, hey, this electrician is, I see that there's a lot of overhead reaching. Can you break down the tasks that they're performing? And the AI is going to look at all of the data that's been fed into the dashboard to basically generate a physical demand analysis and ultimately categorize the level of risk that this person is exposed to. If I go one step further and say I add a photo or a video of the person performing task, the AI is now going to look at what hazards are present and what regulatory violations might I have. So if he's working at height and say he's not wearing the proper fall protection, the AI is going to flag that and it's going to indicate the regulatory violations. Hey, what's your corrective action? And then what are some potential solutions here, which could include vendors for fall protection, budgeting. If you want to implement this type of fall protection system, you should plan to spend $15,000. You can ask it to calculate return on investment for you. So the software really serves as a centralizing agent for all things safety and risk. So again, if I'm the safety person and I have 500 people out in different locations, but they're all dropping photos or images or an incident report or queries about a safety issue in the field, this software solution is taking and consolidating all of that information and basically reading it in real time and generating a risk register for you. So now I can understand that maybe in Calgary, I've got, 3 guys who are inherently exposed to work at heights. But in Edmonton or somewhere else, I've got, um, 20 guys that are exposed to forceful exertions. And this risk register is going to start to categorize the level of risk and then help you prioritize where might I need to spend time, energy, and effort into dealing with these issues, such that I can even go into this cloud-based system and start to figure out what solution should I look to implement. And by the way, since we're working at height, can you create a toolbox talk for me? If I'm exposed to a flammable atmosphere, can you generate a safety program specifically related to pipeline safety with, the better the prompt you give the AI, the better your answer is going to be. But essentially, you would use this solution as a way to problem solve any of your safety hazards.
I love it. Thank you so much, Heather. It's exciting to see how AI can support both injury prevention and compliance, especially with growing focus on long-term worker health. So I really appreciate that answer, and I'm really excited about it. I think it's great. David, I'm going to go back to you, boots on the ground. So how do you prepare your teams for unpredictable risks like weather, visibility, or hazardous material?
Yeah, no, definitely a good question. Although I can speak to our company, I would say we do it probably very similar to most other pipeline companies out there. We go through a morning foreman meeting with everyone and discuss obviously the day's activities, but that meeting is in part always either led or finished up with our safety manager on site, where he will share other components. He'll walk all the foremen through the tailgate the way he would like it walked, the foreman to walk through the guys, so we can discuss so it's not just a reading exercise. He adds context and nuance, and it gives him an opportunity to also talk about unexpected weather, where the medics will be staged for that day, a gentle reminder, of course, of all the where's the star sites and does everyone have the numbers, and of course this is all laid out very user friendly on the tailgate. But I will say, when it comes to preparing our folks, we've adopted a program that a lot of other companies are starting to adopt. It actually was started by legislative requirements in Alberta and BC, where I work mostly, where we have to run a mock drill at regular intervals, such as once a year. So what we're doing now is we're doing it one per project at least, because it keeps guys more familiar and hands-on, because risks, nobody knows when they happen in the moment. So when it comes to preparing the people for being unexpected issues, we've used this mock drill as a way to kind of get them prepared to do it. Another thing we do is we do pre-phase meetings. So in it, of course, we'll always do additional tailgates or FLHAs every time we have a new location or new situation. But what we do is, when we do a real scope change, like say we'll move from ditching to lowering in, or we'll move from, backfill to testing. That's a real shift in scope. So it's like a trigger almost to reset everyone. So we will do almost a pre-phase meeting. And in that pre-phase meeting, it won't just be our own people. We do it very collaborative with the client, and of course the subcontractors involved with that work. So we'll discuss obviously the scope of work, but also go over the risks. And one thing we do in these pre-phase meetings is when it comes to even things like dealing with certain chemicals or products, we will physically pull out the MSDS sheet and we'll quickly run through what the first aid responses are just in case anything does happen. And we discuss all the risk assessment in a very collaborative, open environment, just to basically make people just familiar, just another opportunity. The last thing I will do, and I wasn't planning on it in the context of preparing people, but both Heather and Andrew mentioned about the wearable devices, and I like that because that's becoming into pipeline more and more. And whereas in the past we've been in the bush, now all of a sudden gas monitors are a requirement when we're inside ditch and open excavation. So it's a bit of a learning curve. Again, technology comes into it, and again, we're evolving all the time. But again, we're always have lots of FLHAs just to remind people, hey, things change, stuff happens.
Yeah, awesome. It's so valuable, David, to hear how your team is proactively preparing for the unexpected. Your tailgates, your mock drills, and pre-phase reviews sound like they really build for culture of readiness, and it's great to hear. So thank you so much for that. Andrew, Joel, you meet with companies every day that don't have the resources that David just described. How do you approach challenges in 2025 with your technology? For example, let's talk about geofencing, hazardous timers, and mass notification.
I think a lot of the things that David said are, yes, like bare minimums. We should be doing an FLHA every single morning. Let's do a toolbox talk every week. I like the fact that you guys are taking it even a step further, right? You've got a safety officer that's really switched on, saying let's walk around, let's point things out, let's tell stories about why things are important. Where does technology come in to that? I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel, frankly, but I think there are ways where we can go and serve as reminders or just adding an added level of protection throughout the day. I will tell a story myself. So one of our partners in the energy industry, there was a tragedy on one of their sites, one that we're probably all quite familiar with. Someone forgot their gas detector in their truck, then they succumbed to poisonous gas. After this happened, they approached us. They said, hey, you're one of our safety partners. What would you do? How could you help prevent this from ever happening in the future? And our response was geofencing. I'll explain what geofencing is. A geofence is an electronic barrier that measures whether someone has entered or exited a geographic location. It does this using GPS ping. If you have a pet, you probably see the dog collar that makes sure your pet stays on your farm. It's that exact technology. That's geofencing technology. So how we responded with our partner to help them was we set up geofences along each site that they deemed to be high risk of poisonous gas. And when their employees enter that geofence, they break the geographic barrier. We actually send out safety-centric messaging. In this case, very simply, high risk of gas, do not forget your gas detector. So they get that. It's almost as good as having a second person there tapping you on the shoulder saying, hey, don't forget this. Right? We're trying to remind you so that it never happens again. In the utility space, I've seen this used similarly, right? There's large energy facilities. There are certain areas of this facility in which you might need credentials to work. You wouldn't want me, for example, working in a high voltage area. So a geofence could be used to essentially cordon off that area. If you see that Andrew's inside that geofence, well, that's an emergency in and of itself. Let's immediately push a message to Andrew that says, you are in a high voltage location, leave immediately, leave safely. And simultaneously, we might set off an alert within the system so that a third-party monitor starts following a procedure to make sure Andrew leaves that location as quick and safely as possible. So that's geofencing. Lots of neat stuff you can do with geofencing. Hazard timers. I had talked a lot about a safety timer, right? And a check-in process with that safety timer. It's very important. Sometimes it's simply not enough. A hazard timer is a tool that through a safety app, you can elect for a higher level of coverage. This task is risky. I don't want it to be 2 hours before somebody knows that something went wrong. So I can self-elect to set a 15-minute timer. If that timer expires, somebody somewhere knows that I need help and they know where I am. This is a way that I've also seen a lot of companies manage, again, a very tricky problem to solve. There's no connectivity, but I'm working inside a dam, right? There's no connectivity. There's no line of sight to the sky. I'm in a big steel box that's preventing my cell phone from working. Well, I, as a user, know that I won't have any lifeline for help while I'm down in the steel box. Therefore, prior to entering, I can say this task should take me 30 minutes. I will set a timer. That timer is running not only on my phone, but also on the cloud, right? It's on the control center. So if I don't safely exit that big steel box within 30 minutes to cancel that timer, somebody will know that I entered and I never came out. And they'll know more quickly than if I just simply went missing off the face of the earth and never went home to dinner that night. Amy, I think there was one piece that I was missing. Can you help me out?
I really want to speak about, because when, like David says, when he's in the pipeline, they're not necessarily a lone worker, right? But they could be distance apart from each other. And he has mentioned before that a text, could help.
Oh, yeah.
I would like to discuss how the mass notification can come a long way in these situations.
Well, and David, I'm going to build off the mock drills that you guys are doing, because mass notification could play its way into a really effective mock drill. So let's mass notification, you guys, it's just another way to quickly and effectively communicate with everybody at once, certain groups that you have pre-designated, single people at a time, if you like, or even messaging based on geographic area, right? That would be using some of that geofence technology. I want to talk to the people in this area. There's a wildfire, move west before it catches up to you, right? Let's just go through a mock drill. Andrew's injured. I dislocated my hip. I'm deep in sight. I could trigger SOS. There's somebody that knows where I am and starts following an escalation procedure. Maybe part of my response plan is utilize mass notification to tell everybody on site there is an injury, there has been professional response dispatched, move your trucks off the road so that you don't get in the way while the ambulance is coming down the range road.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And what other areas can you use mass notification? Severe weather?
Severe weather.
Right.
It could be used. It's used at your discretion, to be frank, but I've seen people use it even to update road closures. Hey, there's congestion on Highway 1. Don't use that highway.
Yeah, one thing I want to just touch on, we've gone through our check-ins, we've gone through SOS, hazard timers, geofencing, all those great things. But can you just explain, when you talk about an escalation plan, can you speak about that for a brief minute, just to let everyone know what that escalation plan is?
100%. So through a technology like ours, escalation plan refers to this is the process, configurable right down to the individual if need be, that is being followed when a certain event happens. Each different event should have a moderately different escalation plan. Each different working group should have a different plan. My team reports to David, therefore David is listed in my plan. Amy's team reports to Dan. David doesn't need to worry about Amy. I'd say when building escalation procedures, the two things that are really important to keep in mind as an organization is simplicity and redundancy. If you start making things overly complex, well, they're bound to fail, right? We don't want to bring complexity or chaos to a situation that doesn't merit chaos. Redundancy, very simply in the sense of, David, let's say you're my supervisor for a moment. I hope every now and then you go on vacation. When you are away, Are we going to go and tailor our response plans to account for each vacation? No, that's ludicrous. That's going to fail. Instead, let's build a level of redundancy. When David is away, who takes over? We already have that person listed within the plan. All you have to do is miss a phone call, David.
Thank you for that. I want to ask Heather, because I think compliance and regulations are just so important. And I really just want to ask this to you. Heather, will Soter AI ask clarifying questions? I think that's a question that everyone's going to ask.
Yeah, I should maybe just spend a second describing what the AI actually is. So when most people think of artificial intelligence, they immediately think like ChatGPT. And for sure that's AI, but Soter AI is what we call a vertical agent. And I suppose how I would liken that to, I'm a horrible bowler. And so if I go bowling, I put those little kitty bumpers in the alley
Yeah.
there so that my bowling ball has to stay within the frame of the alley. A vertical agent in AI kind of functions like that. That lane, this agent, Soter AI, is trained on all EHS regulations all over the world. So any safety, health, environmental regulation that's publicly available, that has been used as the source to train Soter's model. So it's not like ChatGPT because that can pull anything and everything from the internet. And you may be getting misinformation, inaccurate information, wrong pictures. But Soter AI is a vertical agent and it can't just pull anything from the web. It can only pull within the context of a regulatory framework. It also includes things like consensus standards. So if people are trying to conform to ISO standards, well, you can drop that in your own workspace and use that as your best practice. So that's kind of how it works and what it is. Now, if I'm a safety person or I'm, a frontline worker and I'm out in the field and I need to generate, I don't know, let's just say my morning talk, my toolbox talk on confined space entry, I'm going to go to a workflow that says, toolbox talk generation. Soter AI is going to come on and say, what's the topic you'd like to discuss? And I might say confined space entry. Well, Soter AI could, like ChatGPT used to, could just spit out a bunch of information at you and you walk away with kind of a mediocre response. Well, now there's thinking and reasoning built into all of these AI models. So now instead of just responding, it's going to say, well, what type of confined spaces are you entering? And what are the potential exposures in these confined spaces? Are we talking about lack of oxygen, flammable atmosphere, whatever it may be? And now that you have this conversation, so I'd say you treat the AI like you would a fellow colleague, and it's a discussion that you're having. Now that the AI has more context through those clarifying questions, you're going to get a much better output, something that's quite specific to the work that you actually need to do.
Wow, awesome. Man, this just shows, thank you, Andrew and Heather, for those answers, because this shows how far we've come in giving teams real-time tools to act fast and stay ahead of risk. So with that being said, I think we can go ahead and jump to our Q&A. So please feel free to jump in and put a question into the chat, and we're happy to dive in. But before we do that, a gentleman reached out to me last night and he said he couldn't make it to this webinar. And I had asked him, if there's a question that you can ask that you would like answered, what would that be? And he gave me this question, and I had to think about this because it is so important in today's world, and it hits every business, and not just being as a lone worker. But it got me thinking, how can this affect lone workers more? And let me start with this question. The question is, in your experience, what are the most overlooked human factors like fatigue, mental health, complacency that compromise the safety of lone workers, and how can they be better addressed? Well, I really appreciate that question because I really had to dive deep and think about this for a moment. And I did take some notes on it, so bear with me. So it's not often obvious hazards that cause the most harm, but the subtle human factors we don't always see coming. So in my experience, fatigue, mental health struggles, and complacency are the most overlooked risks for lone workers. Fatigue can build slowly, especially on long shifts or repetitive tasks, and can seriously affect judgment and reaction time. Mental health is so critical. Working alone can feel isolating, and stress or anxiety can easily go unnoticed without regular check-ins. And then there's complacency. When someone has done a task 100 times, it's easy to cut corners without realizing. The best approach is a mix of regular check-ins, smart technology that can flag early warning signs, and create a culture that is safe enough to speak up before something goes wrong. So I thank you for this question. It has warmed to me to speak about it because I think we all need to speak about it. We see it on LinkedIn, we see it everywhere. And I just want to let you know we're here and there are ways that we can help through this time of mental healthness and fatigue and all of that. So I wanted to get that question first and answered, and now we are off and we can answer any questions that come into the chat. So let me take a look at this. Okay. Amy, do you have paper or something covered? Oh, sorry. That was just my bad. That's not that it. Okay.
Just go to the top there. There's one for will Soder AI ask clarifying questions?
Yeah, we've already touched that. I
Okay.
already went in there to check that.
Okay.
So I'm going to go in and see. We'll give everybody a minute here to see if anyone has a question.
I'd be happy to add to that other question that you just asked or was asked, because I think it's an important topic when it comes to fatigue and complacency and mental health. I would say we talk about this a lot as an industry, and they're also obvious on the surface, but they do need more conversation. Fatigue for obviously reasons, long shifts, and we work the guys, unfortunately, to accommodate different requirements, scheduling constraints, and complacency with any repetitive task like pipeline. Like I said, it's a moving assembly line. So, you do get desensitized to those risks. So we do spend a lot of time resetting people, and that's why we do pause at whenever the events change. Mental health is a new one for sure. What we're finding is, as an industry and in society, it's grossly underreported is where our biggest challenge lies. So we're addressing that by either including different mental health components like therapy into traditional benefit programs. So there's a new health and wellness component to those programs and new on-site programs. I would say we definitely have a ways to go as an industry and as a culture and society. But, I'm very pleased to see the industry take that and spearhead a lot of these initiatives. Different companies are doing different things based on their resources and obviously how mature they are as an organization. But, we're getting ahead of this in terms of any type of legislation requirements, because as an industry, we do care. And so we're being very proactive when it comes to this. I wish we had a better solution at the moment, but it's nice to see some initiatives in that regard.
You're on mute there, Amy.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, so how are changing regulations influencing how companies approach lone worker protection today? So I think both Andrew and I can both maybe kind of speak about this. I know depending on where you live, it could be Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, and then you go into the US, they're all different, the regulations, right? We can go under the US, and if you're not under heat stress, you're under the duty of care, right? In Alberta, BC, and Saskatchewan, you need to monitor your lone worker, right? It is the law to do so. And right now, you know, we're not seeing a lot of fines on that. We're getting a little bit of slap on the wrist for that, giving warnings. But at the end of the day, it is our job, or your job as an employer, to make sure that your lone workers are in contact with a supervisor Andrew, do you know how many hours you can go within these provinces to be
It's a 2 hour time frame
a
is the
2 hour?
standard. Yeah.
So now it's not just about having a policy, it's about having tech and process in place to prove compliance and prevent incidents before they happen. Andrew, do you have anything to add on that question?
I mean, I'd say with the way legislation changes, definitions change, right? What is a lone worker? What was a lone worker 10 years ago? You need an AI tool to keep up, right? You need something to let you know. But when it comes down to it, the definition of what is a lone worker really comes down to the organization to decide. You can take the most stringent definition, and that would be somebody who is out of sight or auditory range. And by taking that definition, I would argue that not a single organization in the world has a single employee that isn't sometimes a lone worker, thus subject to that legislation. Alternatively, I've seen organizations talk about the concept of alone together, right? We are a crew of 4 that go out onto the range road in one truck. If that truck fails, well, we might as well be alone. So we are alone together. Somebody needs to have a tool to protect them as they would if that person was alone in one truck. Well, that's about all I can think of right now, Amy.
That's fine. Now, Heather, is that something anyone can do with the AI compliance tool that you guys have? Is ask what the lone worker laws are? Are you guys able to tell the difference between each province and each country and define what a lone worker is and what the regulation is for that?
Yeah, the knowledge base for Soder's AI it's very lengthy. I would never endeavor to cover all of it in this webinar, but it's on their website. But in Canada, there's a whole list of Canadian regulations, and it's by province. And same thing in the US. All of our federal regulations are listed, and it includes anything under federal OSHA, plus in the states, we have state plan states. So I'm based in Michigan. We have MyOSHA. So we follow Michigan OSHA, not federal OSHA. But then it includes EPA, the DOE, the FDA, mining safety and health, the USDA. So all of these different regulations are under there. And, you know, in the context of lone worker, you could look at any country across the globe, how they define that within a regulation or standard. And as long as that's published as a standard, it would be in Soder's knowledge base. So yeah, and even in the query, you could say, how does Canada's definition of lone worker differ from the US version of lone worker? And you would get a response, and it would specifically cite the standard.
Awesome. Well, you know, I did a lone worker safety checklist. And after I did it, I did put it into the AI compliance tool to make sure everything is correct. And it was really able to help me. So all of you are going to get that safety checklist. And I think that is it for the questions. So across the board, we're seeing how the right tools, whether it's for emergency readiness, consistent check-ins, or physical injury preventage, and meeting compliance can truly transform safety outcomes and really make sure that your loved ones come home safe, because that's really what we want at the end of the day, right? A huge thank you to our incredible panelists. David, Joel, I know you're somewhere out there. Your presence, I felt it. Thank you. Andrew and Heather, thank you so much. I am proud to call these wonderful tech companies my partners, and I will be sure to reach out to all of you. And if you're curious of how this might fit into your own operations, I would love to show you. So we're offering a free, no pressure demo and consultation. So we will be reaching out to you soon. Thank you again. and wishing you all a wonderful and safe week ahead.